Welcome to Coming Clean, the podcast dedicated to common sense environmental dialogue, environmental optimism, and real environmental solutions. This show is proudly powered by Ørsted. Welcome back to Coming Clean with your host, Benji Backer. I am really excited to next week be talking with Kristen Seaman and Brent Bennett, two different perspectives on electric vehicles. We're going to have kind of like a point-counterpoint conversation on electric vehicles and the future that they have. But for this week, there are some really important conversations around two very pressing news stories that impact kind of the future of the environmental conversation, the energy conversation. And to talk about those, I brought in my good friend, Lucy Biggers, per usual. Hey. This is the third time the charm, the best. I think this is the best time. I don't know if the third time is the charm. Then we can really bring you back for a fourth time. We can't go down in expectations for everyone. But welcome back. It is so great to have you. And what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some EV developments with Tesla exporting some of their manufacturing to another country we know about called China. But first, we're going to do some U.S. news here and talk about Texas, where they've actually, the Texas state government, they have actually started to crack down on renewable energy there, because you may not know this, but Texas is actually a leading producer of wind power in the country. They produce more wind and they get more of their energy from wind than California or some of these other states that you would think would be high renewable states. And also they're on track to surpass California to be the biggest producer of solar. But the Texas lawmakers are not happy about that. They were like, no, this is not the Texas way. We're the oil and gas state. So they've passed some bills to basically create more environmental restrictions for wind and solar, but not for oil and gas. So basically, Financial Times had the report and basically said that, one of their new bills would require permits for renewable energy projects, but not other types of power plants, evaluating factors such as encroachment on agriculture and wildlife lands. And these measures would actually go retroactively to plants that already are in operation, and they would need to apply for the permits. So it seems like a very targeted political move. And the reason why Texas had so many renewable projects was because they're a low regulation state. So people just took advantage of, putting in wind projects and getting, subsidies for that, and putting in solar projects and not having to go through all this red tape. So it's a weird thing because they're sort of impersonating California, which is a much more bureaucratic state, but to, cut down on something that they don't want. I don't know. It's fascinating. What do you think about it?
That is fascinating. And I do think that people don't realize that it's actually a lot of the conservative farmers and ranchers and even oilmen who have really embraced renewables. So I'd be interested to see what their reaction is going to be to this, or if they're split on it, which is what I would imagine is the case. I feel like this is a perfect example of a purposeful overreaction and overcorrection for political gain. There are some problems with solar and wind for sure, as we've talked about together, with the environmental impacts that those have and how they are not taken as seriously as they should be. But they're using that reality to overcorrect and to punish solar and wind only, it sounds like, at the expense of the further development of that, so that the oil and gas community can just keep kind of having the monopoly that they've had over the energy sector, which is, again, a frustrating overcorrection. But it's easier to do that and to win a political battle than to come up with some sort of nuanced solution. And so that seems to be the nature of politics right now.
Well, it's so weird to me because it seems like they're just doing it because they're like, whoa, renewables are doing too well. Let's slow their development down.
Right.
Versus there being some sort of problem that they're trying to respond to. And the only thing that I could think of is Texas has had power grid problems that obviously we've heard about with, they have blackouts that happen and they have really high energy prices. And so it's been politicized that renewables are to blame for that, which I don't necessarily think that that's true. I haven't seen, the smoking gun that's the case. It's sort of just a political thing that people say. But another thing about the Texas power grid is it's independent. So they can't bring in energy from other states when there is a blackout. And so that's one of the things that people have said. So I don't like this whole thing because it's so overtly political and it's going against what these conservatives argue that they are, which would be like open market, like let the best man win. Right. Renewables were winning, like you said, because it was favorable for people to put them on their land if they have really windy land and they can make extra money by putting in some, whatever they're called, wind turbines.
Whatever they're called.
And so, I don't know. I just
solar
think it's
panels, wind
solar
turbines,
panels, whatever. But I think it's just
fans, basically.
I just always want to give people the benefit of the doubt and be like, is there a real logical reason, and look beyond the headlines? But this is one of those ones where I was like, I don't see it. I think that this is overtly political. I think that they don't like that they are getting renewable reputation in Texas. And it's just the nature of our government right now. It's just so polarized. Everything is like becoming a front line of the culture war, like even wind turbines. Yeah. Wind turbines. I think it's silly, especially because they're already built. These things are already built. It's not like prevention of future ones. I mean, it's that. And then we're retroactively, it's just not a good look.
It's the overcorrection is trying to make a point and drive it into the ground that doesn't really, it's not necessary. And you're right that there are also some problems around the grid reliability and the investment from international and out of Texas corporations that are trying to dictate whether or not Texas should have solar and wind more or less. And the Texas government is trying to say, hey, let us decide for ourselves. Like, we don't want Vanguard or BlackRock or these companies to make Texas have renewables, which is kind of what has been happening. So those are like real problems, but then the reaction doesn't need to be, okay, so we're going to like basically try to stop all of this. It's more how, like, Texas's response, in my opinion, should have been, how can we do it the Texas way? How can we expand renewables and be pro wind and pro solar panel while also knowing that we have oil and gas? How can we do that in our own Texas way? If I was the governor of Texas or the Texas legislature, I wouldn't like that the grid wasn't reliable and that there are power outages. I wouldn't like that other companies with basically bigger budgets than the entire state has are investing tons of resources into my state to dictate what energy sources it uses. I wouldn't like those things either. But then the reaction is not necessarily what it is now, or doesn't need to be what it is right now. And I think that that's really, like you said, it's focused on scoring a political point to basically take the opposite stance of what they don't like instead of coming up with a solution to it, which is not what they're pursuing, really.
It's just negative. I don't like it.
It's just negative. And it's really, but it's easy to fundraise on, it's easy for them to send out an email. And I can guarantee you that's what they thought about when they put this legislation together. How can we send an email saying we're taking a stance against the outsized interests that are trying to take control of Texas, right? Like,
right.
Word for word, that could be the email that they wrote. Maybe a little more creative than that. I'm not that creative with email titles, but that's what they're thinking.
Yeah, it's so true. It's sad.
And
I want a little bit of high level.
Yeah. And it does kind of tie together with the next topic, which is this electric vehicle battery, facility that they're moving, that they're starting in China, that Tesla is starting. But before we get to that, I think the Texas story, what would you say that the happening in Texas around solar and wind, what does that say about where we should be headed as a country? Because this overcorrection is basically, like you said, it's very similar to California, but it's kind of the opposite of California, because the California is taking, like, basically you're not allowed to do oil and gas in this state anymore.
Wait, it's like different energy sources.
Yeah, Texas is trying to do the same. Like, what does this mean for states in the country right now?
I think it's just a reflection of like how low level our politicians are operating now. I feel like everything, like I said, is the front line of the culture war, and it's all about scoring political points. It's not about a bigger vision, a unifying vision, forward thinking, like looking at the science, or looking at the market and being like, what's best? It just feels very reactionary and like low level, base level, just not positive. So I don't think it bodes well, because I think if anything, if I was
states.
And I would say, like, for Texas, I would give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, I think they've done a lot of things well, in the sense that people have voted with their feet since the pandemic, and they've moved there because they are have less regulation, because it's more affordable to live there. They're building more homes and all these things. And so like, I think they've done things well. And so I feel like this kind of goes against their ethos of, building and innovation. And it's because it's renewable energy. And it's very obvious. And so it's like low level. I don't know. I feel like you're saying, they could have done it their own way. And so it just doesn't bode well, because it's like no one's forward thinking. Everyone's trying to think about scoring political points. And when we have really difficult decisions to make going into the future, like it's a little nerve wracking that these are the people in charge.
Yeah. And instead of leading from the front, they made a political overreaction correction to try to score points. And they could have taken the California debacle on energy, which, could be a whole multi-hour long episode. They could have taken that and said, okay, yeah, we're going to do it our own way. We're going to show California what you should and shouldn't do. Now they're just trying to say, here's our California did it wrong, so we're going to do the literal exact opposite of what California did, just to prove a point. And that's really frustrating. Yeah.
And they're cracking down on stuff that's already been built. So that's what's really weird to me. Like, I get more environmental regulations, even like, again, benefit of the doubt moving forward, but I don't know. It's just so obviously political.
When you go to the grocery store hungry and you buy too many items because your stomach is talking. This is like the politicians. They just can't help themselves. Like, they're just like, give me more. Like, I just want to pile on. I want to do everything to score as many political points as possible. And I'm not even going to think about the ramifications. Just like when you get to the end of the shopping trip, you didn't think about how much that would actually cost. So, I mean, it's a really unnecessary reaction. And while we're doing that in the United States, we're bickering between Texas and California's opposite stances on this. China is laughing about it because they are not only making the solar panels and the wind turbines and the coal and the natural gas and everything that we're using in this world right now. They're leading in pretty much everything. But now they have basically obtained another American company investing in their country, Tesla, investing its biggest, from my understanding, pretty much its biggest battery production facility into Shanghai. They announced it this week. Tesla is one of the most American-made cars in the country, and now even that is going overseas to China to make the batteries and to not just like fund the battery production, which has already been Chinese powered. It now is also like the assembly and all of the labor that is making that happen is now happening in China as well. The minerals and the labor and the production.
Did they say why? Just because it's cheaper and everything's already there? Like, why did
exactly? And it seemed like Tesla was alluding to the fact that like basically this reality that we are bickering about everything. We're not allowing any projects to happen. We're not allowing mining. We're not allowing, like, obviously they have cheaper labor and all those things. I do not think it's a justified move. Like, I'm very frustrated with Elon and Tesla for doing this, but there are reasons, right? It's not like they're just doing it to give China more power. They're doing it because it's harder to do in the United States, and we're making it harder on ourselves than we need to.
Also, wait, I was laughing when I was reading about this because it was like Elon, Tesla, which no longer has a PR department, only responded by Elon tweeting. I'm like, oh my God, that is also something that, like,
100 ways not to run a company. And I think that might go in that 100.
Can I also say my other issue with this? Because this is when I'm so skeptical of batteries. Because first of all, they're so mining intensive and they need a million different mines and rare earth metals. I mean, not a million, actually, don't take that literally, but
might
many.
Be more than that, actually.
To make these. And then you look up the like energy conversion for what you get from all of this like work.
Right.
And it's 1 megapak can power 36,000 homes for 1 hour. 1 hour. And I'm like, why did you pick the scale of 1 hour? Because obviously they can't power that many freaking homes. Because then if you divide 3,600 homes divided by 12, so like do 12 hours, you only have 300 homes for 12 hours. So you're building 10,000 of these megapacks a year. I mean, I can't do the math now. I should have done it before, but think about that. So like if 1 megapak is only powering 300 homes for 12 hours,
right?
And then times that by 10,000, Is it like 3 million homes or whatever? So you can
the math is remarkable because there
it's
is
300,000, right? 3,000 times 300 times.
I think if visually people could see what you're explaining, they would be shocked with how much it takes to create these batteries, and that this mega factory that Tesla's building in China, how many minerals and resources it will take. And people don't think about that. And like, you are going to destroy so many areas of this world with the current technology. I believe that electric vehicles the recycling the batteries, the size of the batteries, all those things could get a lot better. But with the current technology, you're going to destroy the natural landscape of this planet. And once you extract the minerals and the resources from the ground, you can't go back. Like you can't put them back in. Like it doesn't regrow. This isn't like a plant. Right. This is sediment and rock and minerals. So I really do worry about that. But the reason why Tesla goes to China
is because they can do it
because
there.
People don't want to do it here because of the realities that we just
it would be about. Like tearing up a mountain in like Aspen. Like no one's gonna do that. Like, and like or like Wyoming or wherever these places, like I'm sorry, when a push comes to shove, there's gonna be a lot of NIMBYism about this and not in my backyard, which I mean, I'm not necessarily I mean, like, I get why, because mining is messy. And like, that's what I was on this rabbit hole this morning when I was like getting ready for this and thinking about rare earth metals. And I have like 5 books I now need to read. Basically about the hidden cost of the green transition. And basically what I, in my research, was understanding is like, right now, so much of this messiness has been outsourced to China, and China is, very obviously not an open society, and they're not going to be transparent about what it takes to get these rare earth metals and rare earth elements or whatever. And so they've been doing all this. They're powering our phones. They're powering this computer right now. I mean, like, we can't live without them, but they've kept it behind this curtain of like what they're doing. And so for one example is it's like really sad. Like, anyway, so this guy, Gilliam Petron, wrote The Rare Metal Wars, The Dark Side of Clean Energy. Have you heard of it? I need to read it. Mm-mm. But basically they talk about how China took over this region in Mongolia, and it was a sacred mountain in Mongolia. The Chinese government reduced its geography to ruin it as part of its strategy to dominate rare earth markets. And over a 10-year period, the entire cancer-ridden population of the region has fallen from 2,000 people to 300. And then they say first the animals got sick, then the infants, and everybody else. One village near the mine's radioactive and acid tailings pond was known as Death Village because 60 of its residents died of brain or lung cancer between 1993 and 2005. Radioactive tailing waste, fluorides, arsenic have contaminated both food chains and drinking water. And that is where they're getting these rare earth elements that go into our phones and all of these things. We don't even produce any of rare earth metals in America. We don't do it.
Right.
Because it's so bad. And so I just think the rubber's hitting the road. Because we have this realization that everyone's trying to transition to green energy all of a sudden, and China has a monopoly on it.
Yep.
And so now we're investigating, well, what does it take to get these rare earth metals? And then we're like, oh, crap. Well, we don't want to do that in the US. And then the other thing I was researching this morning is how the Ukraine is one of the most resource-rich places in Europe. And what was just invaded by Russia, which is allies with China. So now we have this geopolitical tension that's happening. And then you think about weighing all of the risks of climate change and the green energy, tearing up the land you need for green energy, and then the geopolitical rifts. And you're like, what's actually better? Because all of a sudden, if we're going to be in a world war over these rare earth metals and all these different things, and then it's like, maybe we should just be adapting to climate change and like drilling. History is repeating itself. We had wars and stuff over oil, and we're having wars and stuff over minerals. I mean, it's a dirty business to get resources to power our lives. Mm-hmm. It is. And it doesn't matter if it's for solar, wind, or for oil and gas. Like it truly is a dirty business, and we have to find a balance. And right now we're not finding that balance, and we're all focused on kind of what sounds good, but we don't. Mm-hmm. It's for a while, like it's like our food. We didn't think about what went into our food for so long. We just kind of ate it and assumed that it was going to work out for us. Now we think about that, and we look at every ingredient, and we kind of know as a society like what those ingredients are. I wish that could start to happen with our energy and our products. Like if we could think about,
okay, this solar panel didn't just come out of thin air.
Yeah.
You know, our car did not just come out of thin air. This phone did not just come out of thin air. What did it take to create that? Was that done in a way that I should be conscious of? And probably the answer is probably. And if you think about it that way, I think people would realize like there are trade-offs to all of this.
Yes.
Just like there's health benefits and negatives to everything you eat. Like there's no perfect anything. There's no perfect food. There's no perfect way to transport yourself around in a car. But if we're not thinking about those things, then the people can take advantage of us, just like those food companies took advantage of us for so long. Mm-hmm. Now China is taking advantage of us with our reliance on this dirty business. Mm-hmm. And they are using it to their advantage, and Russia knows that they can too.
And we haven't seen anything yet, by the way. I think the thing is they're going to reel us in, get us completely dependent, and then turn off the tap.
Right.
Because that's the thing. When you control the energy, you can control the direction of the world. And we've had an advantage because we've had all this oil. And like, not to say, by the way, like there's so many mess up countries that control a lot of oil in the Middle East that don't have good human rights.
And we should think about that too. Exactly.
And so that's why as the more that I learn, I'm becoming such a more like build stuff here,
right?
Like control our power here.
But you don't want to risk that.
What do you mean?
You don't want to risk, like, let's just say China and Russia's plan isn't to cut off the tap. You don't want to risk them being able to do that in the first place. Like the fact that even could be a thought process is scary. Even if
by the way, it is. I mean, I'm sorry. Right. Like they're not. It is.
But even if it was France, I wouldn't want that. Like even if it was Germany, like an ally, like even if it was a country that we don't feel like has ill intention, is ill intention, I still wouldn't want that risk.
Yeah, other countries controlling it, and so that's where I'm at with all this now. It's like weighing the weight of the climate with the geopolitical realities, with knowing what it means to control our energy, because when you control your energy, it leads to also just controlling like your democracy, your quality of life. And like, there's so many things to think about, and we just don't want to be vulnerable to other countries. And even though we already are to China, we have to think about not even be making it worse.
And I think Tesla moving its, next huge battery factory there
that will power like 300 homes. Just kidding.
This should literally be a wake-up call though, because top 10 cars that are American made in terms of the amount of resources and minerals and everything has been Tesla. Most of their cars have cracked that top 10.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. And now that's not even going to happen because of this. This is a huge deal. This is a huge shift from a company that has tried to do things here, saying we're not doing.
But it's not for their cars though. It's for their energy. It's for their megapacks. It's like,
but that's like where they're seeing the future of their business. But I'm just saying, like Tesla as a car company is focused on doing things here, and now they're saying we're not going to do the energy stuff here. That should be
And Elon is like low key like anti the war in Ukraine and like doesn't care about it. Now I'm going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, and those things shouldn't even have to be worries of ours, but they are, because we're not even thinking about what the ramifications of these decisions are. And yeah, we don't want mining in the boundary waters of Minnesota, one of the most beautiful places in this country, honestly, where there are tons of minerals for energy and electric vehicle batteries. That we don't want that.
Yeah,
but it's going to happen somewhere if we're going to keep going down this path. So what's going to give? And right now, Tesla's saying you're not going to allow it in the United States. We're going elsewhere.
There's so many things to think about.
That is so true.
We need to recycle. We need nuclear. And we need, I don't know.
I think we just got to keep all of our options on the table here, because and not siphon ourselves off and hone in too heavily into anything, because we don't know enough yet. We don't know enough about the economics of everything that we're trying to pursue. We don't know enough about how many resources we actually have about what we're trying to pursue. We don't know about the damage that it's going to cause at the scale that we're trying to pursue. So,
well, also, this is so interesting, just like to think about the fact that we've talked about AI so much and everyone's like, oh, the singularity and like AI is becoming so strong. And it's like, we forget that all of this digital technology has a real world impact, and there's there's rare earth metals going into the technology to make that computer have satience.
Right.
And I feel like we as humans are so ungrounded and so disconnected from like from the earth and like where things come from, that like we think it's this like unstoppable thing that's like, we're on this path and we're going to get more and more technologically advanced. It's like, yeah, but everything has a cost from the earth. Right. So in that regard, there is a limit to what we can do, because even if you're uploading your brain to a computer, that computer needs a hardware and software, and it needs a power to run.
That'd be one scary computer if you.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be uploaded. It actually makes me feel better because I'm so scared of AI that I'm like, wait a minute, but we still like need the earth. Even though people pretend we don't, we do.
I think the world is evolving technologically faster than we're able to keep up with at this point. Whether that's with like knowing how to handle ChatGPT or knowing actually how to handle the resources that we need to extract for these technologies. Like, we don't really know what's happening. We're just kind of hoping that it's going to work out. And like, look, like,
it will.
Lucky girl syndrome, like that works really well on a personal basis. But like, if we're talking about like the geopolitical, like realities that are faced from mining and ChatGPT and all those things, and the AI ramifications, Lucky Girl Syndrome is less applicable to that. You can't just hope that it works out. Well, with that,
really leaving on a positive note.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, Lucky Girl Syndrome, super positive.
We just have to be realistic, though.
We do. And next week, or very soon, we're going to have a great conversation with Kristen Seaman of General Motors, who they're obviously moving incredibly quickly towards electric vehicle and that electric fuels and that transition, as well as Brent Bennett from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who has a really interesting take, kind of not anti-EVs, but more skeptical of the future of EVs, and hearing their two perspectives is going to be amazing. Our two perspectives are just as amazing. Maybe even more.
They are.
Thank you so much for being here, and excited to have you on again soon per usual.
That was fun.
Thanks.
Don't lose all hope, everyone.
There's still hope there, especially with Lucy and I at the helm of this podcast conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Benji.
And before we jump, the Coming Clean podcast is grateful to be powered by Ørsted, a wonderful company strengthening America's energy security with reliable and domestic clean energy. Through its integrated renewable energy solutions, Ørsted is creating American jobs, investing in American communities, and driving American innovation, all while preserving our country's natural habitats. A clean energy future truly connects us all, and Ørsted is helping lead the charge. To learn more, visit us.orsted.com.